What's up guys, I'm Shernfire. I've been a professional player since Season 5 and I've been to MSI and Worlds multiple times.
The new champions here in Oceania as Direwolves will represent the OPL at MSI 2017.
While also climbing to top 10 Korea multiple times and hitting rank 1 NA and OS multiple times. My goal is to help people reach their rank goals and ultimately breed an army of high elo junglers. Alright guys, what's up? Making a quick guide because this champion Skarner is absolutely broken. Riot's been changing it multiple times. You can see that it was a top laner at the start and now it is a jungler because of the small buffs they did and the overall buff they did to Q. His Q was a 1 second recast time, which is horrible, or 0.5 seconds. And they reduced it to 0.3 or 2 or 0.2 or 3 and now it is less clunky. So the champion feels very, very broken. Here to tell you guys all about how to play it. After 10 games of playing it, I think I've got this champ figured out. I won most of my games after the first couple losses, figuring out how to play the champion. And so eventually I figured it out. So Aftershock is going to be your best rune. I've tried Phase Rush, I've tried Grasp, which a lot of people are trying to do, but I just think Grass is probably the next best thing, but it's hard to proc. PTA doesn't make sense because you don't actually do that much damage, and the stats that you get on the other runes are kind of useless for Skarner because all you want to do on this champion is build health. Now, for ability usage, you want to be mainly playing around your Q. So you're maxing Q, then your W, but in that saying that, your Q and E are probably your most important abilities. How you use them is going to be key, especially your Q. We're going to talk about that later. And I would argue on this champion, your passive in your Q is much more broken than the ultimate, which a lot of people used to think of what Skarner was, just an ulti bot. But now I think the ulti is just a complementary to your already broken kit. Now, as for builds, this is a topic that I'm going to be a little bit less experienced on, so the build might change. But for now, it's going to be Heartsteel, Ninja Tabs, Mercs, or CDR Boots if you're really greedy, with Sunfire or Therax. So Heartsteel no matter what. The reason why I said Sunfire second is because I think you can deviate. You can build Bambi Cinder first buy, or you can completely avoid Bambi Cinder and ignore Sunfire. Or you can rush Sunfire and then go Heartsteel, but no matter what, Heartsteel is the best item because, once again, this champion's damage literally scales off health. How broken is that? So the more tanky you are, the more damage you do, right? So Heartsteel, best health scaling item. You can imagine along with overgrowth and double scaling health per level, something I forgot to mention in runes, you have a shitload of health by the time you're level 9 and you have your first item, and that's when you probably do your most damage or your first back. Now, as for gameplay, you basically want to master the full clear or you want to be 3 camping. It's pretty simple. You're just super strong early game. That's your strengths. You're either invading or you're ganking, or you're just going to full clear and gank at the back end. Or you can literally full clear scuttle base. That's what makes the champ so good. You're flexible. You scale, but you don't scale very well, right? So that's the only weakness I would say of this champion is you don't actually scale later in the game where you're going to carry, right? Unfortunately, you're not Cassante level where you're extremely tanky and you do a lot of damage. There is a point where you don't do damage, but that point is very far away. That's like 2.5 items. But 1 to 2 items, you're very tanky and you do a lot of damage, which makes this champion absolutely broken. And as for summoner spells that I completely forgot about, you want to go Flash or Ghost, but mainly want to go Ghost based on whether you can greed Ghost. If you can't greed Ghost because you're versing Jarvan or any sort of lockdown champ where you need Flash to dodge their ability, then you should go Flash. Otherwise, you should try to greed Ghost. Okay, so now let's explain how Skarner works in regards to why he's broken and why the Q is the most important ability, not the W or Alt. So let me explain the Q. So the Q is an ability that basically gives you Xin Zhao. If I were to compare it to Xin Zhao Q, basically the same thing. There's a buffer where you get bonus damage on each auto attack for the next 3 auto attacks. And on the third auto attack, you throw a boulder. And at the start, which I should have mentioned just then, is you have cast time. So you pick up the boulder. It's a 0.25-second cast time where you pick up a boulder. And you can throw that boulder anytime. But on the third, no matter what, if you auto attack or cast it, it will throw out a boulder and do slow or damage. Now, the important thing to note here is how your Q interacts with other objects and your E. So what's going to happen here that makes this champ absolutely broken, that's unprecedented, correct me if I'm wrong, is your Q stays alive if you E. So that's going to be your main combo, Q and E, before you gank, before you do anything. Whenever you use your E, you should always be queuing before, because it saves your Q, it resets the cooldown or keeps it alive. And then 2, you also, the most broken thing about Skarner is that you get 2 Qs. So basically, while your Q is active longer than the duration of what it should be, your second Q is already, the CD is already going. So you can essentially get 2 Qs off, or very close to 2 Qs off, when you otherwise wouldn't. And when you pretty much combine that with your literal stat check where you do percent max health and you do extra health because your champion scales of health, you do extra damage because your champ scales of health, it's really essentially broken. And so what I'm trying to point out here is it doesn't only work with your E. If you hit a camp, you activate your Q and you hit a camp, and you hit it every time just before your Q is about to go on cooldown, you're going to create the same effect. Same with when you hit wards. Now this is the big thing. When you hit wards, your Q will not proc. So you will have 3 stacks of your Q if you activate it and hit a ward, and then after you have your 3 stacks, you will have another Q with another 3 stacks. So essentially you have 6 stacks of Q the whole time, which essentially you're using 2 abilities if you really think about it in one go, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's why I favor this champ more as a skirmisher rather than what people used to think Skarner's identity is as a alt bot. And in regards to why this champion will always be broken until they fix this, is because the Q and W does percent max health damage, and also scale off max health. So by being tankier, you essentially do more damage, which is absolutely ridiculous on top of his insane clear speed. Okay, so now let's talk about how to utilize Skarner's ult in relation to your Q and E. So as I said, your Q and E is your bread and butter. And so to combo, it will be the same. You Q, E, try and knock them into the auto, ult. So the main reason why you want to auto ult before you actually ult is because, for example here, if I just Q and ult, I throw my rock, and then after I auto him, I'm not going to be able to do any damage to him. So ideally, a full DPS combo, you always want to Q auto attack twice and then ult, because your ult forces you to throw your boulder. A full combo will always be, like I've said before, is to stack your Q on something for as long as possible, right? While keeping it alive. And when you're ready, pop them up. You have Q again, Q, W, ult. And you can see how much more DPS I did there. So that's going to be your major combo, is stacking your Q on camps, just like you would if you were playing Camille, or if you were Xin Zhao. And then once you can queue, your queue is going to be on a much lower CD. You see 6 seconds right there of CD saved. Other than that, guys, make sure you abuse this champion before it gets nerfed. Obviously, it's going to be a while before it gets nerfed because you know how Riot loves to make new champs OP and keep them OP for a little bit until they have to nerf because the community is complaining. But other than that, enjoy playing the champ.
Subscribe me.